A great man once said, "Follow the writer, not the character." And after I had such a good time reading Frank Miller's outstanding Batman Year One, I was thrilled to see that he was equally as known for his work with Marvel's Daredevil. What's not equally known is my knowledge on the character, which amounts to someone in 8th grade telling me that I'd like it because it's Batman but Marvel. Now I'm sure that made someone either chuckle or very mad, so let's find out which one as I read Daredevil, the Man Without Fear. We start off with a nice little preface from Ralph Macchio of all people, and I would definitely recommend if you are reading these classic stories for the first time, get these special editions. They include so many awesome tidbits like original art, creative commentary, and behind the scenes of the actual script. Now, by now, the first thing I always like to talk about is the art, and I would say that 90s Marvel is not quite 80s DC. I would say I'm still forming my opinion here, and there is a lot to like, but I think this monochromatic style just doesn't get me as excited, and it is very, very stylized, but it doesn't do a whole lot in terms of atmosphere. This is the same New York City as you see pretty much everywhere else. Still though, there's definitely a few stinkers, and I wouldn't say the art moved me in really either direction. In terms of the plot, we start off with a young Matt Murdock well before he becomes Daredevil, and I knew this was going to be an origin story like Year One, but I wasn't prepared that it's more origin than story. For example, in Year One, it took about an issue for Batman to put on his suit, which I thought was a little fast, but in here, all 5 issues of this story take place before Matt suits up, and it definitely serves to set up this character and universe as opposed to telling a specific arc or even like a 3-act structure. And just like a pet peeve here, but stop showing me these awesome covers of Daredevil fully suited up if he never actually gets in the suit. This was definitely a ballsy decision, but the writing here really shows off. I'll get into this a little bit later, but it is so beautifully apparent how everyone involved in this project just loves this character, and I'm not gonna lie, it seems like Frank Miller has a favorite child, and it's not Batman. One of my favorite tropes that shows up really early on is the kid is the parent in the family one, and it's used really well with Matt and his father, John. And oh, that is child abuse right there. This first issue really made me like Matt because he sits in between the larger-than-life backstories of someone like Wonder Woman with the hyper-relatable ones of Spider-Man. Basically, I think this character is really working for me because the world just hates this guy. You know, when I'm reading Batman, a thought that's kind of in the back of my mind is like, at the end of the day, Batman could retire and live a good life on his own. He's rich and he shouldn't and wouldn't, but like, it's an option. But Matt/Daredevil is just getting the shit beat out of him. He has nowhere to run, and at the end of the bonus material here, you can read this little prologue that Frank Miller wrote, and it is so perfect. He's got every excuse. Born to poverty, a broken family, a childhood spent in a squalid slum, it's a wonder he isn't a villain. And let me say, that's one hell of an elevator pitch. And just a genius idea to spend so much time with him as a kid. It just really made me sympathize. I think this childhood era is honestly the best part of the story, and when he does get hit by the truck, you can just see all these creative ideas hit, like having panels from his perspective of him slowly losing his sight. I don't know how much of this is Miller or John Romita, but there are so many cool examples of this, like how there's this part of him taking revenge. The writing describes his thoughts with smell, taste, and audio, true to how a blind person with some supernatural powers would actually act. Anyways, he goes through his training arc with his new mentor, Stick Watts. His dad dies after refusing to throw a fight for the mob, and the issue ends. This first issue is a bona fide 10 out of 10, so what's next for this character? Well, step 1, he's gotta get revenge for the guys that killed his dad, and that's where we got that sweet writing from earlier. I think it's at this point where the Batman comparisons, if there were even any left, kind of ended for me. Like, take this last guy, Matt needs to hunt him down, he's hiding in this strip club, and so when Matt comes to get him, the strippers are like, attack! And just imagining Batman in this scenario definitely brought me a chuckle, that's for sure. And oh my god, he killed a stripper. So he's definitely torn up about this, and I was warned that Daredevil's do not kill rule is a bit softer than Batman's, but I think it works for this world and this character. But then Stick, the mentor character from earlier, is like, well, he's useless now, he's failed us. And it got me a little confused. I was expecting him, honestly, to be the classic mentor who dies, but This gave off more like Ra's al Ghul vibes. But it's the start of this bigger issue that this story wants to set up everything and resolve nothing. But let's keep going for now, and I'll come back to it a little bit later. Another thing I really like is just how much bullying is a central theme in this story. It is not treated as this thing that kind of happens to kids but then goes away. It's really framed at every level, from his childhood to his university. Even Matt's father is effectively bullied. And like year one, I think by having so many just like brutally realistic conflicts, it eases the reader in before introducing anything like supernatural, aside from, you know, the powers. And so once they do introduce something more supernatural, like Elektra, who has the same powers as Matt, I was so ready to read more. Guys, I can fix her, I swear. It's here where the writing now takes more of a backseat to the action, which I gotta say is also really strong. I think having no gadgets really forces Romita to get creative with some of these fights. Every once in a while, Matt has this conflict with vigilantism in general, which I wasn't really impressed with. It kind of seems like an afterthought, like, this cop is dead. I'm sorry, you can't convince me that Matt is going through this internal conflict when shit like this is happening. But then he's like, ah, dang, broke the rules again, shouldn't have done that. Those are minor gripes though. I really like this middle chunk with Elektra. There's just so many cute moments. Like, she goes back to his dorm to hook up, right? And then we see his roommate try to come in afterwards, and the place just looks like a fucking tornado hit. You're everything I need, Elektra. Everything I've ever wanted. I killed 5 men last week. But then they kick her out pretty abruptly, might I add, and like at this point we're over halfway through and things are still only getting set up. But at this point the writing is not taking itself too seriously, which you know I am always down for. Yes, you always know, don't you know, my silent nameless friend? Damn them, they'd all kill me if they had the chance. You're the only one I can trust. Wait, holy shit, it's the guy from Into the Spider-Verse. And his design is so fucking cool. Kingpin really shines in this. They really focus on how his brutalist form of crime affects children in just a visceral way. This is how you set up a villain. The rest of the story is pretty much Matt training this girl and rescuing kids. And I did enjoy it, but at this point we have introduced Elektra, Stick, Kingpin, the apprentice girl, and resolved none of them in 5 issues. Meanwhile, he hasn't even made his suit. Side note, he puts it on the very last page, and I just love this line that reminds us that he has no idea how it looks, and it's just really cute, okay? Back to the plot, I think it's very tough to think about this by itself because it's really not meant to be. You can tell how passionate everyone was when they worked on it because of how much they kept including more and more material because they kept having more and more ideas, but it wasn't really meant to be a self-contained story. Like, there's this really cool letter from Miller a few years before the final story released, and you can see how they wanted to make the Bible of Daredevil stories. He even says, I also hope that page count isn't a concern at this point. This last excerpt from Marvel magazine really told me that this is not meant to compete with a full, sprawling story. It's meant to set you up with questions in your head for later. And it did this very well, but I would have liked them to trim it down just a hair. I think less happens in these 5 issues than maybe 1 or 2 of some other comics I've read so far on this channel. But the writing is just that good, and those moments of normality where Matt is getting with a girl or defending his roommate from bullies are good, but I don't think with the lack of resolutions I can call it great. And before I give it the old score, if you have recommendations for what I should read next, be it Daredevil or another hero, please let me know. I'm always looking for recs. Next week I'm finally reading Batman: The Long Halloween, so come aboard and subscribe if you don't want to miss that. So I am gonna give Daredevil: The Man Without Fear a 6 out of 10. I do think I want to read more Daredevil, and most things I've seen recommend issues 158 to 191, but I do hope those give me some more plot, more so than The Man Without Fear did.
Well, how many superheroes are known for what they can't do?
I hope you enjoyed. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.